So 2 weeks ago we were having a look inside this hive here, which is Jess, our marketing queen bee's hive. And been following, it was a swarm catch, then it had a little issue, lost the queen, they raised another queen, and now it's back and ready to super. So we're going to show you how to add your Flow Super for your brood box. So there's a few things to consider when you do that. One is, whenever you're opening a beehive, it's good to choose a nice day where it's mid-morning to mid-afternoon, on a day that's got nice fine weather, so your bees are nice and calm. Next thing we're going to do is add just a little bit of smoke to your hive. So on this hive you can add it under the screen, or you can add it around at the front of the hive in the entrance. So it's good to wait a few minutes. So while we're waiting for the bees to then take on their calm persona, we'll take a look at the Flow Super and show you what you need to prepare in order to put it onto the hive. So if you're just tuning in, today we're going to show you how to add your Flow Hive Super to your brood box. Okay, so the things you'll need to prepare is you'll need to unpackage your flow frames and insert them into the box. Now I'll just show you how that works. When you've got your flow frame like this, you insert it so they form a nice window at this end. So this end with the plate goes this way, and we push it down. So the next thing to do, is make sure the frames are all pushed forward to make a nice window at the front. So to do that, we actually need to adjust this little screw at the back here.
Okay, so just hold on a second, we're experiencing microphone problems.
Okay.
Can you hear it now? Because there should be no microphone.
Okay, sorry about the microphone issues. We're just standing by with technical difficulties. Okay. So what we're going to do is show you how to add your Flow Hive Super onto your Flow brood box. So you need to first insert your frames so they all fit into the box like this, to make a nice clear window across the front. And there's a screw at the back which holds the frame tightly against this side, and they need to all come out. Let me show you that now. So using a Phillips head screwdriver, just wind out this screw till it's almost touching the back, and that's just to give you a bit of adjustment because the boxes you may be using can vary. Okay, and you put it back down, and what that does is create a nice window here. So when you run your finger across here, it should be fairly flat. You don't want any gaps where bees can get out. So if you forget to take those screws out to push the frames forward, what you'll find is when you go to harvest, then this could bend in and bees could come out. So it's make sure all the cells are in line for the bees to fill them. So they may move in, and then we go along with our key, insert it into the top and turn it. And what that does is it pushes all those parts into the position where the bees are ready to coat them in wax and create the cell shape. That's a really important step, where you might find some of your frame is not set correctly. Each one Okay, good. Don't forget to put your caps back in. If you leave the caps out, typically what happens is ants come along and make a nice home in the top, which isn't very fun to clean out. If you've done it the wrong way, I've designed a little thing on here which means that you won't be able to push the cap all the way in if it's in the wrong position. Okay, next we can replace the window cover. Key access cover goes there. Okay, so the hive should be ready to open now. What I'm going to do is just get my hive tool ready, and of course make sure you protect yourself. And if you've got questions, please put them in the comments below and we'll get to answering them at the end of the call. So if you've got any questions, put them in the comments. Okay, have your gloves handy. If you're new to beekeeping, wear your gloves. The roof comes off. Okay, now we can already see there's a nice number of bees because they're starting to come up through that hole and into the roof. Next thing to do is get your tool just under the inner cover here. This is the tool that comes with our bee suit kit. Lift that off. Now because the inner cover is sitting straight on your brood box, there's a chance that the queen could be on the inner cover. So have a quick scan. You're looking for that longer bee with her long abdomen. She often has a strutting type movement too and slightly bigger legs. Can't see the queen. Just in case I've missed her, I'm going to lean that up against the entrance of the hive so that she has a chance to crawl back in. The queen cannot fly when she's in egg laying mode, so it's important not to orphan her from the beehive. Okay, looking in here, it looks like they're ready to super. All the frames have been filled out. If you take a look across here, all the frames have been filled, and 2 weeks ago we had a look and there was plenty of brood getting ready to hatch and all the frames were drawn out. So when you see that and there's lots of bees, it's ready to super. In a warm climate you can super earlier than that, but in a cold climate it's best to keep the brood box small while they're developing, because that gives them less room to maintain the temperature in. If you've got questions, put them in the comments. Today we're adding a Flow Hive Super to the brood box. So the next thing to do is add your queen excluder. The queen excluder means the queen bee won't be able to get up and lay eggs in your flow frames. So that's an important thing to do. Okay, some people do run with no excluder, however that's a bit risky and you need to inspect then before you harvest. So that just goes on like that. Square it up nicely, and the next thing to do is to put the super on top. There we go. So now the super's been added to your brood box, and there's the bees will slowly start to come up into the top here. Don't expect it to happen straight away. The bees still are a small colony and they'll need to grow into this size. If their brood box was more full, they'd be up here quite quickly. So on top of that goes your inner cover. Now, what I'm going to do is have another really good look. Probably better to shake these bees back into the brood box just in case the queen's on here, because you don't want her to be stuck in the Flow Super. I can't see a queen. Good, so I can shake these in. Okay. Inner cover goes on top. gently nestling it down so you don't squash any bees. Then on top of that goes your Flow Hive roof. Just like that. And that's it. You've now successfully added your Flow Hive Super to your brood box. The bees will grow in here, expand into the brood box and start to wax up those flow frames and then do the magical thing of creating the honey. So thank you very much for watching. I should also note that you can speed up the process of the bees taking to the flow frames. The general recipe to get fast action on your flow frames is lots of bees in the brood box. When you open the window, you should see a lot of bees in here. If you're not seeing a lot of bees, then it'll take some time for the bees to actually breed up. But the recipe is lots of bees in your super and a good honey flow on, and then they should take to the flow frames quite quickly and do that process of waxing them all and storing nectar and creating the beautiful honey that we love. So if you've got questions, put them in the comments below and we'll answer.
Helga asks, I've heard that bees are more aggressive if it's overcast. Is that true?
It is true. Bees can be more aggressive on grey days, particularly if they think there's rain coming. A lot of bees stay home instead of going out to forage. There's a lot more bees in your hive and they get a bit twitchy and they're looking for something to do, which might be to keep you away from the hive. So a blue day, mid-morning to mid-afternoon with not too much wind is ideal. However, you can't always get that when you're beekeeping, but do keep it in mind if there's rain coming or storms coming, expect your hive to be much more aggressive when you open it.
Helga has another question. Do you use beetle traps?
We do use beetle traps. Our Flow Hive 2 has a massive beetle trap right in the bottom. The bees chase the beetles through the screen and down into the bottom where you can trap them with oil in the tray. This Flow Hive Classic has a core flute slider here, which you can add beetle traps like this one on to the core flute. So if you are going to use insecticide type traps, then I think it's better to have them outside the hive below the screen, just in case you get water in your hive. You don't want the insecticide to leach into the hive where the bees may come in contact with it.
Rhonda says, it's been over 12 months now and my bees don't like going into the flow frame. Any suggestions?
Okay, if you're having trouble with the bees taking to your flow frames, then again the recipe is lots of bees when you open the window and a good honey flow on. If that's not happening, then you could have a colony that's just a little bit slow and it might take them time to build up, or they might need to have some new genetics in there by replacing the queen in order for them to really populate. The other thing is, if you've got multiple boxes and you simply added the Flow Hive Super on top, take some of them away so that the bees are then more compressed into the Flow Super, and that will speed up that process. The first time can take time with some beehives in some situations. So there is a few tricks you can do if you're getting impatient. One is you can scrape burr comb from the brood box or anywhere around the hive and get it on your hive tool and mash it into the flow frame surface. So you won't damage the flow frames, they're quite strong, so just scrape some burr comb and just put it across the surface like that. And what that'll do is create an area that the bees really have to work, because that's clearly in the wrong spot, and they'll get up there quickly, they'll recycle that wax and they'll attach it to the flow frame in that area, and that'll start the process there. If you've got a really short season and you want to be really sure that you get some honey or give yourself the best chance, then you might consider painting wax onto the flow frames by heating some up on the stove and getting a paintbrush and painting the flow frames. Doesn't matter if it's a bit dribbly, it's just basically doing the same thing as mashing some burr comb in, is giving the bees some wax that needs to be redistributed in a fashion that is better to form the cell pattern. So any wax you put onto the flow frames will speed up that process also.
Leia asks, can you harvest wax and honey from the brood box, or is it better to let it as it is?
You can harvest wax and honey from the brood box. Typically the frames on the edge are honey. The general pattern of a brood box is the brood's mainly centred in the middle, followed by pollen and some drones out wider, and then honey on the edges. It's not always the case, but that's the typical pattern. So if you've got a nice frame on the edge of honey, there's no reason why you can't harvest one of them and put back a new frame for the bees to start the process of drawing out their wax again. Now, if you're going to add a new frame, then you can add it maybe a couple of frames in. That way you're cycling the frames from the centre of your brood box out towards the edge, which is a neat thing to do in order to keep fresh wax in the brood box.
Glenn says, once the super is added, how often do you suggest checking the brood box?
So that really depends on your area, and the best place to get that information is from your local beekeepers. Here, commercial operators typically service the brood box twice a year. Other countries with the varroa mite, it's important that you service the brood box and look after them much more frequently so that those mites don't take over your hive. So it really does depend on your area and the conditions. So check with your local bee club, ask on our honeyflow.com forum, and also ask some experienced beekeepers around you to get that information of how often.
Hayden asks, I'm in Shepparton, Victoria. I have a full single brood box. Is it too late to add a super before winter, or should I wait till spring?
Okay, so it might be getting a little bit late. Again, ask your local beekeepers. There could be an autumn flow coming up, in which case it might be still a good time. I mean, we're still well in summer, so I would say go ahead and add it and see how you go. The important thing in your area may be that the bees have enough honey stores to last the winter. And if they don't have enough honey stores to last a long cold winter, then you may need to feed them just prior to winter in order for them to store a bit more honey. Again, find out from your local beekeepers whether it's an important thing to do, or how much honey stores they need to survive the winter. Here we have practically a honey season all year round, so there isn't a concern here overwintering. In fact, we get a beautiful flow here on the coast over winter.
Ross asks, is the waxing of the flow frames a once-off event?
It is. So once the bees have waxed it that first time, then they're just like any other sticky frame that might have been processed in a conventional way, all covered in wax and ready to go. So it's just that first time that some people experience that they're slow to take to the frames. The recipe is lots of bees in your Flow Super when you open the windows, and a good honey flow on. If you don't have those two things coinciding, then it could take some time.
Zach comments, we found our bees fill the peaked roof in preference, accessing it through the hole in the roof. Okay,
that's interesting. I haven't seen that before. Generally, the bees will fill this area before they fill the roof. So typically that's the case. However, every beehive's different.
And Ross also asks, should the inner cover be shaken into the brood box rather than the Flow Super?
It should. So I did mention that as I got the inner cover and shook it in. I had a really good look for the queen. So if you are going to shake bees off the inner cover into your brood box, make sure there's not a queen on it, or you'll be in trouble with the queen stuck in your Flow Super laying eggs in the wrong places.
That's all for questions today.
Thank you very much for all your questions, and thank you very much for watching.